Welcome to this new lesson on the Subcontracting and Partnership Exchange Center. The content of this lesson is going to be on the effective buyer engagement and also on working with the UNIDO Management Information System, which is the software that the SPX managers can use for the effective handling of SPX operations. Let me present to you the course outline. First of all, we will discuss the buyer engagement and the matchmaking process. Secondly, we will explain how to work with the management information system. And thirdly, we will present some key performance indicators that are necessary to monitor and manage the success of the center. Let me now move to the first section, which is on buyer engagement and matchmaking. The first question that arises for the SPX is where to actually identify buyers. So what the SPX can do is look out for large investment projects that happen in the host economy. So these could be large infrastructure projects, large construction projects, or any larger manufacturing operations. For instance, with regard to mining and other large projects related to raw material exploitations. Then the SPX offices can look into the notification of tenders. So these are so-called tender bulletins. It can look in industry media, such as press releases, internet, newspapers, company, and other communications where tenders are usually placed and explained in greater detail. The buyer identification happens at different levels. First of all, there are the original equipment manufacturers, which are operating at the very end of the supply chain and which are the ones that sell directly to the customers. But there's also buyers that are at the first tier or at the second tier of the supply chain. So what a buyer is somehow flexible, and the SPX needs to be flexible when it identifies these buyers. Another way of identifying buyers is through subcontracting fairs. And one large fair that comes to mind is the Midas Fair that is organized every year in autumn in Paris, and where usually several thousands buyers and suppliers come together to display their products and to exchange on new business ideas and business opportunities. Public procurement is also a means to identify opportunities that can then be routed to the supply chain at large. When we ask our SPXs in our global review on SPXs in 2000, it was very clearly that the majority of, or the most success in terms of buyer engagement was through direct contacts. So the SPX is in contact through telephone, through mail, and through email, and from this communication, they produce opportunities to be routed to the SPX clients. Industry visits was another important channel for buyer engagement. Then 12% did buyer engagement through fairs, such as the one I mentioned, Midas, and others had meetings with managers, the management of the buyers. Before reaching out to the buyers, it is important to have a little bit of background on the procurement tactics. So what this chart is showing is on the horizontal axis the total costs of the items that the buyer wants to buy and the risk that the buyer would be exposed if the item would be of minor quality or if it would not be delivered in time. So usually the buyer makes 4 classifications of parts or items that are being procured. The first one is the A classification. These are highly critical products to the production process, and they are usually high-cost items. So in this case, the buyer wants to manage this process very closely. The buyer wants a very close relationship to the suppliers and wants very rigid management and quality systems being in place at the supplier level. The second item, or the second item category, are still very critical imports, but these are items that have less of a cost impact. So they are classified as B items. C items are those that are considered as non-critical products to the production process, but they are very expensive. So in this case, the tactic is very much about cost reduction, looking at outsourcing opportunities to lower cost countries for the supply of these C items. The D items is the majority of items in terms of numbers. So about 60% of all items are classified as D. These are non-critical products and they have a low cost impact. So now that we understand the procurement tactics, we can move to the next stage, how this reflects on the supplier requirements. We recall the A items. So when the buyer reaches out to suppliers, what they want is a long-term engagement for the supply of these 8 items. They have a very clear cost and quality focus. They even move towards joint research with suppliers. They share the designs with suppliers, and they have generally a very deep process integration. So here, issues such as lean manufacturing play a large role, and quality assurance system are very important. But in terms of overall number, this is just 5% of all the items. Then the so-called B items are 25% of all items. Here, the buyer still wants to have a long-term engagement. They want tight quality systems, and they want certain levels of flexibility of the supplier. So what they do is they keep safety stocks to make sure that at any time of the production process there is enough inventory and the production process is not interrupted due to non-timely delivery of items. And there's generally an approach to risk minimization. So the buyer might choose not only one supplier, but might choose from more than only one suppliers to cushion any supplier bottlenecks. Lead time, also very important, has to be short, and reliability is important too. On the C categories, cost is the main determinant for supply. So short lead time is important, and inventories are kept very, very low, even to the extent that the buyer has no inventories at all. And this is again reflecting the lean manufacturing focus on considering anything that is not directly related to the production or the assembly process, to consider this as waste. So high inventories are considered as tying up unnecessarily capital, and this should be dealt with at the level of the supplier. Then the D items. Here, since the D items are low risk and low cost items, the main focus is on easy administrative handling of the procurement process of these, and keeping low levels of hassle, and having a physical proximity of the supplier to the buyer. So here we find a lot of automatic procurement systems, so where actually software is handling the replenishment process of inventories and not humans. So here, in fact, this is the largest number of items, 60% of them, And here is also a large opportunities for SMEs to break into new supply chains and to become suppliers. Generally, continuing on the supplier requirements, there are several dimensions that play a role. I mentioned it before. There is the cost dimension. So the lowest cost of acquisition and ownership is key. There's the quality dimension. That is the delivered quality of the product and service, as well as safety and hygiene issues. Delivery, this is the manufacturing cycle time, the make-to-order lead time, and the ex-stock lead time, which are important determinants subsumed under the item delivery. Flexibility. This points to the ability of the supplier to change, to work along specifications provided by the buyer, to quickly be able to change from lower volumes to higher volumes, and to adapt to changing delivery patterns. Innovation, fifth supplier requirement. This has to do with the time to market, the technology acquisition, and the product pipeline of new products. Sustainability, this is an item that becomes also more and more important. Buyers often want to buy from suppliers that have proven ecological efficiency, that don't work with pollutants, and that have also subscribed to certain standards on corporate social responsibility. Reliability, another very important factor, especially when entire systems are being supplied and when the engagement between buyers and suppliers are long-term and involve a lot of R&D integration. Then the fact that there's forward capacity, the quality and delivery performance is consistently high, and if any failures occur, the supplier is ready to resolve those immediately. These are all factors that can be mentioned for reliability. The relationship is also becoming more and more important. That means there's high levels of integrity, there's trust and openness between the buyer and the supplier, and there is shared development and improvement. Now, having looked at these 8 items, it is important to understand that for each item that the buyer is procuring, the weights is changing. That means for certain items there's a clear cost focus, and for other items there is a clear quality, flexibility, and focus on innovation. So this is important to keep in mind when the SPX is managing the matchmaking process. Now, once the SPX center has understood how buyers structure the procurement process, the objective is to create requests for quotations. So after initial promotion, they start technical discussions with the procurement department of the buyer. They understand the procurement criteria. They look at the buyer's parts list and extract short lists from the buyer parts list. Once this is done and they have successfully generated the first RFQ, the request for quotation, then they have to make sure that the RFQ has all the elements that are needed for the supplier to make the quote. So important elements of the RFQ are the deadlines. That means the supplier has to know by which deadline they have to make their proposal. There could be non-disclosure agreements attached to the RFQ. So these non-disclosure agreements have to be signed beforehand by the supplier, because the RFQ might have technical specifications, blueprints that the buyer considers as being highly confidential. So, this is very often the case when highly sophisticated items are being procured. Then the RFQ should give a clear indication on the drawings and specs. So that means the technical parameters, the physical dimensions of the items that are being procured. Then further information needs to be given on the order size. So what is the quantity that needs to be supplied. Then information on the lead time. Is it a rather short lead time or a longer lead time is possible too. And what is the price range? So where the buyer specifies a priori the maximum price that should be quoted for the given item. And certifications is another important area. So some buyers they strictly require, say, ISO 9001 certification or ISO 14000 certification for environmental standards, or other ISO certifications such as ISO 22000 for food safety. So these are also sometimes minimum requirements for the quotation. Another element of an RFQ could also be the provision of certain references. That means the supplier should give evidence on the kind of engagement it has had before, whether it can give some company names, some buyer names that can successfully vouch for the quality of the supplier. So industrial references is also often part of an RFQ. Then we move to the matchmaking process. It is important to understand that the process is done by humans, and humans means the staff of the SPX center, which means the SPX manager and the SPX engineer who is doing the profiling, as well as the SPX engineer who is doing the benchmarking. So unlike some B2B portals that have proliferated in the past, such as Alibaba.com, which do the matchmaking process entirely automatically, it is still done by the SPX office. And the value added here is, by doing this, is that the SPX office has seen all the suppliers through physical visits, and they have a lot of knowledge about their supplier base. So it is not just an automatic system. Nevertheless, it is facilitated through UNIDO's Management Information System, in short MIS. So the matchmaking is then happening on the basis of the profile form. And the profile form, you would recall from other lessons where the profile form has been explained in greater detail. The profile form gives specification on the products and processes. It follows the hierarchy of, for example, ISIC and UNSPC, where it classifies the products of the supplier very clearly into segments, family, classes, and even down to the level of the commodity. The matchmaking can also happen at the basis of the benchmarking form, where minimum standards for buying can be set for the sales profitability, the R&D investment, the lead time, the financial liquidity, etc. So again, I can refer to the specific lesson on benchmarking, where the items of the benchmarking form have been explained in great detail. The matchmaking process is not a one-off exercise. So It starts though by presenting the forms to the buyers if they so require. So the process has been as follows. The request for quotation has been collected by the SPX, and it has been routed to a specific number of suppliers. And in this process, the buyers may require a certain short list of suppliers, and they may require specific information on some of these suppliers. So the forms that have been filled out beforehand can be shared, but they should only be shared upon confirmation by the supplier, because the forms contain sensitive information, confidential information, and the supplier has to agree to divulging this information. As I said, the matchmaking process is not a one-off exercise. It may require certain rounds where supplier profiles are being shared with the buyer looks at them, rules out certain suppliers because they don't match with the criteria, and we are getting further down to a further shorter list. So at the end of this process, we might end up with 3-4 suppliers where the buyer has indicated that further negotiations are possible. This is the moment when the SPX can facilitate the negotiations, but should not participate in the very detailed and contractual discussions that are subject in these negotiations. This slide gives a visual description on the matchmaking process. What you see here is the items that were explained before: cost, quality, delivery, flexibility, reliability, sustainability, innovation, and good relationship. So the buyer sets the minimum requirement that the supplier has to have in place. So this is the purple bar gives the minimum requirements. This is then being matched against the supplier practice, which is the yellow bar. So you could see for some items the yellow bar is below the requirements of the buyer, in which case a matchmaking would be difficult. But for instance, on the quality aspect, the supplier exceeds the requirements of the buyer. The delivery, here the buyer wants very short lead times, and it seems the supplier cannot ensure that for whatever reasons, maybe physical proximity and other factors. And then this goes on for the remaining items. So here, for instance, the buyer had not set any minimum requirements for sustainability and innovation. So these are simply not important factor for the procurement of that particular item. So this should not create an obstacle to the matchmaking process. So this analysis could be done for each item and for each request for quotation that is being matched against an individual supplier. This could be done individually, but there are also specific matchmaking events that the SPX can organize. So these can be done as 2 to 3 day events where in the first day the general objective of the event is communicated to all stakeholders, and then in day 2 and day 3 there are specific sessions dedicated to matchmaking. There could be face-to-face meetings that happen in these matchmaking events. And it can be a time-saving operations, because if the SPX manages to mobilize a larger group of buyers on one hand and also a larger group of suppliers on the other hand, in the ideal case, the SPX manages to achieve several matchmakings in the course of the event. So it can be a time-saving operations, but also the event needs good preparations That means the buyers have to bring their technical specifications and their drawings, and the suppliers have to have their supplier profiles ready, and also ideally they have gone through the benchmarking process as well. It's a good alternative to an exhibition, where the exhibition is sometimes very superficial on what is the general business activity of the company, but for the matchmaking events a lot more is needed than just the general business activity, but it's really information, exact information on equipment, products, processes, lead time, etc. that should be prepared for these events. They can be repeated as many times as necessary, but a good interval is about 2 to 3 times in a year. Now let me move to the next section of this course, which is working with the Management Information System. First of all, it is important to understand the overall IT architecture of the system. So in the middle, here you see the global headquarters database. That means all the databases that are being produced at the country level are consolidated and come together at the global HQ database. But there are individual country level databases attached to this. So this is the SPX Management Information System for South Africa. This is the Management Information System for India. This is the MIS for Vietnam. This is the MIS for any other country. And this is the SPX MIS for, just to give an example, for Iraq. So we have an online system or an offline client application. Both of them are possible, especially if the offices, the satellite offices are operating in a low bandwidth environment. It may be more useful to embed the management information system into the local intranet and produce or develop a client offline application. In that case, the synchronization of the database happens in predefined intervals. Usually once per day, the database is, or any changes to the database or to the system that have been made at the country level will be synchronized with the global HQ database, so that the HQ database is always up to date and allows a global tracking and monitoring of all the activities that are going on in the individual countries. Likewise, if opportunities at the global level are being collected through UNIDO headquarters, these can then also be routed to the individual SPX offices. So it is a two-way road where both parties can benefit. Also, it is important to understand that the SPX office at the country level has an internal site and an external site that is visible for the SPX clients. The internal site is used by each SPX office for profiling, for the processing of requests for quotation, and for defining the user roles, such as the SPX and SPX staff. The SPX internal MIS system allows for activity tracking and monitoring. It allows for the establishment of a digital library. And it allows the SPX office to do the shortlisting process in an effective manner. You remember the shortlisting is one of the key activities for the matchmaking process. So this can be done automatically or semi-automatically through the MIS system. So now let's look at the the MIS system the way it would appear for the SPX South Africa. So this is the general dashboard for the SPX South Africa. So here you see activities management, my open activities, my past due activities, and then useful resources, a profiles dashboard, a shortlist dashboard, a request for quotations dashboard, the library, the activity dashboard, and specific settings that are preferred by the SPX office. What is also shown on the very first page is the recently registered companies. So that allows the SPX manager to really keep track on how the database establishment is evolving. So in this particular case, we have 10 new registrations of companies, of supplier companies for the SPX South Africa over a time frame of the past 15 days. Here, on the bottom right-hand corner, the SPX can manage the number of profiles per country, and on the upper right-hand corner, there is an events calendar. So here, events can be inserted, or specific deadlines can be set, and other activities can be inserted into the events calendar. So now let us go once again specifically to the profiles dashboard. Here, a new database entry could be made. So an SPX profiler has visited a company, comes back with a completed profile form and wants to enter this information into the management information system. So it would create a new company. Then, once this is done, I have my company database established here. I can see as many items as I want. So by scrolling down with the mouse, I can see 10 items per page, or 50 items per page, or 100 items per page. And I can search within these items. Either I'm using a free Google search, which I type in my keywords. For instance, a country name, I type Iraq, and the system displays all the suppliers from Iraq. Or I use a more advanced search, where I can type for suppliers in Iraq, not only in Iraq, but say from Erbil. So in that case, the system displays only the suppliers from Erbil. The advanced search also allows for search very specifically by economic activity, or by products and processes, or by size factors and such as total turnover or total employees, etc. So the advanced search and the free text search is a very flexible tool which helps the SPX officer to quickly shortlist the number of suppliers that are relevant for a given request for quotation. Needless to say, a company profile can be edited. Given that the company profiles should be maintained over a longer period, it is not always necessary to revisit the company, but it just requires updating of some items. Say the company has procured a new machine, so this machine is being entered in the field for the machines. But there is no need to change any other information about the company. So let's move to the website, which is the external side of the country-level SPX. First of all, it is important to note down what the website is. It's http://spx.unido.org. So the external website is linked to the MIS intro page. The country-level website allows for a supplier dashboard, and there's also a buyer dashboard. What this means is that both suppliers and buyers can log in on the country-level website. For instance, SPX Iraq has developed its own SPX website, and suppliers can log in, manage their own profiles online. They can update their profiles, and they can communicate with the SPX office also online through the dashboard. Likewise for the buyer, who can manage RFQs, who can also change their own profile so that the SPX office is always up to date on the changing characteristics of the supplier and the buyers. This is an example of an SPX website. Here we took the SPX Vietnam. So the SPX presents itself, what it does, what's the objective. The host institution of the SPX presents itself. So this is the Vietnam Chamber of Commerce and Industry. It has put its logo. In this particular case, the website is bilingual, English and Vietnamese. And there is an indication on the kind of sectors that are being served through the SPX, like metal, electronics, power generation, and constructions and others. In case the SPX office has not created its own website, the SPX MIS allows for an easy template that can be used. So this template is displayed here. The SPX India can also explain what it does, what is the host institutions, what is the sectoral focus. In this case, the focus is on auto components, leather and footwear. The local SPX statistics can be displayed, and of course news and contact details should be displayed as well. Now, I mentioned the supplier dashboard. So the supplier has entered the supplier dashboard through the SPX country website and is now able to manage certain things. So the supplier can edit their own company profiles by using the company profile tab. The supplier can also search for other companies by using the Search Companies tab. The system also provides a buyer dashboard at the individual country level. Here, the buyer can manage certain things as well. The buyer can create a request for quotations directly in the system by providing all the specifications and the technical parameters, sending it off, and it arrives at the SPX office dashboard. The buyer can also edit the company profile, and this is then also being updated in real time for the company profiles managed by the SPX Center. It can further search for other companies, and it, as well as for the supplier dashboard, there is an events calendar as well. So now let us move to the last section of this course, which is managing the success of the center. What are the key performance indicators of a good and successful SPX? Well, this is the number of companies, visitors, and registered in a specified time. The number of sectors covered. Although here it is important to remember that it is not the number of sectors per se that are important, because certain countries may have a comparative advantage in some sectors, say plastic or metal. So it could also, the SPX could create a very exhaustive list on only those sectors and provide a specific service for only those two sectors. So it's not a quality criteria in itself that all possible sectors within the economy are being captured by the SPX. Then the number of promotional events, fairs and meetings is another performance indicator of the SPX. The number of matchmaking interventions, meaning how successful has the SPX been in bringing buyers and suppliers together, and what has been the contractual value of these matchmaking interventions. How many SMEs have been benchmarked? How many SMEs, based on the benchmarking process, have subsequently embarked on an upgrading program and after this upgrading program have been successfully linked to new buyers? How many contracts have been concluded? What was the value of the contracts concluded? And has the SPX been able, in doing all these activities, has the SPX been able to generate certain income streams so that it can cover for its costs? And some of these costs are costs related to personnel that has to reach out to the suppliers and the buyers, that has to visit the shop floor. And so has there been an income stream that covers these costs? There are certain risks that UNIDO has identified when doing a global stock taking on the SPXs in the past. Some of the risks are indeed financial sustainability, whereby the SPX has not been able to generate the income streams that are necessary. Then another risk is staff motivation and turnover, which means that the SPX manager has to make sure that the staff that is working for him is motivated at all times, and that they receive a good remuneration which keeps them active and motivated. The database should not get old, but it should be updated frequently, and the management information system helps in doing this. How much private sector buy-in has been generated? And also thinking about the role that government can play in mitigating some risks. If the government is a strong supporter of the SPX and endorses it in its policy-making process, that is also a success factor and positively contributes to the viability of the program. Finally, how can the SPX generate some income? Well, one channel is subsidies or contributions in kind by the government. The second one is the establishment of a flat membership fee. So the SPX clients, they pay, say, a yearly membership fee, regardless of the intensity of the outreach of the SPX, or they pay on a per delivery basis. For example, the SME that is going through the benchmarking is paying a certain fee directly to the SPX. The SPX can also charge fees for doing specific services, such as studies, organizing fairs, or organizing specific training seminars, for which they levy a subscription fee. And there are also other contributions that could be made, in particular contributions such as those through UNIDO programs or the contributions of other international organizations. So with this, I conclude this course, and by recalling that we first explained the buyer engagement process, we explained how an effective matchmaking exercise should be done. Then we went through some functions of the management information system. And finally, we discussed key performance indicators of the SPX and what the SPX needs to do to sustain its operations in the long term. Thank you very much.